Welcome to Grow in the Middle podcast. I'm your host, Mariah Krystal, founder and principal coach of AYC Consulting Group, also known as Authentically You Coaching. Grow in the Middle podcast is about real truths of growing successful careers, the good, the bad, the great, and the ugly. Here we're going to talk about navigating imposter syndrome, leaning into discomfort, and learning about roles that aren't always spotlighted or deemed glamorous. Every episode is short, actionable, and designed to give you practical insights, honest stories, and guidance to grow your career with clarity and authenticity. Whether you're aiming for a promotion, pivoting into a new role, or just trying to figure out your next steps, this podcast is where you're going to thrive in spaces that matter the most. Let's get into it. Welcome back to Grow in the Middle. I'm your host, Mariah Krystal, and this week on Grow in the Middle, we are diving into what it means to be a trailblazer, navigating success when you're the first to do it, the first one in the room, and constantly carving out your own path. I'm joined by Ashlynn Raquel, a social media whiz, influencer, marketing strategist, and community builder who spent nearly a decade mastering brand partnerships, influencer outreach, and digital marketing. As the founder of two agencies, Ashlynn Raquel Media and Dawson Marie, she's connecting brands with the right creators while championing diversity in the influencer space. But beyond the business, Ashlynn knows what it's like to be the first, the only, and the only one figuring it all out. In this episode today, we're going to talk about trailblazing, what it's like to be the first in your family to build a career like this one, discovering your calling, the journey of finding purpose in work and life, being the only one, navigating spaces where you don't see yourself reflected, and balancing relationships, the juggling act of building a career while maintaining personal connections. Ashlynn's story is one of resilience, creativity, and forging your own path. If you've ever felt like walking a road no one else in your circle has traveled, this podcast is for you. Welcome, Ashlynn.
Thanks so much for having me, Mariah. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to chat.
Yes. So thank you so much for joining. I met Ashlynn back, early last year, I believe. And it was around the time I was looking to start getting into creating my business. I had the thought about the podcast, but just really trying to step out on my own. And I started watching you, I believe, or following you on LinkedIn. And I really, really loved your content. I loved how you presented things, how you made it relatable. And I'm like, oh my, she's dope. She's dope. And we had our first call and I was like, okay, I want to work with you. And I'm instantly one of those people, I feed off of vibes. I feed off of I've already watched you in your space without you knowing. It sounds stalkerish, but I've already been watching you. And so it's just to then be able to connect and to really see how you show up in this space has been really interesting. So I would really love to hear a little bit about how you've built your career, both your professional career and your entrepreneurial career, and how you've gotten up to this point. So if you could take us through your journey, that would be awesome.
Okay, perfect. So this is a wild ride, but I graduated college and everything was intentional in terms of planning. I always knew that I wanted to be in marketing as a whole. In terms of my upbringing, I had an amazing family. I love my family down. Everybody went to the same college, so I also went to that college almost. In terms of everybody that has a degree, we all went to the same college in my family.
What college?
So, the University of Southern Mississippi. And so starting out in college, I actually had my major's international business, which a lot of people don't know that because I'm just so great in marketing now. And around sophomore semester, my counselor was like, I think you like marketing. And from there, I just took it and ran with it. I've been creating content on my own for a very long time. So I was always obsessed with the analytical side of what that looks like. And during that upbringing was around the time that all of the OG YouTubers, specifically the Black ones and people of color, were talking about the pay discrepancy. And I had a delusional feeling of me being the change to that. So I worked really hard to get in this space, which a lot of people know that it's not that many that look like me in this space. So that was already something to start with. So fresh out of college, I pivoted into social to really get my foot in the door into marketing, because marketing is a very sought after industry now. And from there, I just pivoted and continued to grow in different spaces. I've worked all types of influencer marketing roles now. I call them the big three. I don't know if that's real, but it's nonprofit, agency, and brand. So I've had my hand in all types of influencer marketing, and I just structured myself to get to the point of where I wanted to be when I was in college, which was helping people of color and Black women get the pay that they deserve, Black men as well. And that was just kind of my driver there. In terms of my side businesses, they started as passions and just hobbies. I started Ashlynn Raquel Media a very long time ago, but I didn't like put a name to it. Until I started doing strategy, graphic design, web design, and logos, and I really loved it. And in the influencer industry, you can only have a creative hand in so much when you're working with brands. So I cultivated my business so that I can have that creative outlet of just being free and working with people that I wanted to work with. And then in terms of my newest agency, Dawson Marie just launched yesterday on Valentine's Day. And this was also just truly a monumental moment for me. It's named after my grandma and great grandma, so it really hits home in terms of the legacy that I want to build for that brand. But it's a boutique style influencer agency. And transparently speaking, I just still see the discrepancy of money when it comes to creativity, but also still women of color, men of color, and people of color. And I really wanted to put my foot in the door of that as well and continue to grow the purpose that I had when I was little. So it all seems to keep circulating back to what my original plan was. And I just think I can do things differently and I can do things better. And so that is why I launched both options so that I can actually have my ability to make a change in both industries.
Awesome. So let's break this down a little bit, because there's a lot in here that I think people can learn from, and even just like industry terms and all those things. So let's go back to a couple of things. I want you to talk a little bit about what this sounds kind of obvious, but it's not. What is international business? Talk a little bit about what the marketing side is, and then explain to us influencer marketing, right? All the things that kind of like you live and breathe, but I want to show the audience like there are different pathways.
Absolutely. So from my perspective of international business marketing, I was more so going to be based off of how my counselor explained it, it would be me learning another language to ideally work in the business aspect of being a translator. So it didn't have anything to do with like the creative side. It was more so being a translator for business decisions. And it could have still been really helpful for somebody that did want to be bilingual and multilingual, because I do think there is still a need for that, but that wasn't my passion. And it was very, to me, I call it like an analytical side of business. Because you would still have to, it was totally different. It had nothing to do with like my passion. In terms of influencer marketing is under the umbrella of social media marketing. So it's a form of marketing. Think of it as celebrity endorsements, but these are your friends. These are creators that you trust. You actually build a community and a passion for watching them on social. So influencer marketing has thrived in the last 10 years, I believe. Where it's basically turning regular people into celebrities almost, because eventually they do get to that point. But influencers influence you, as cliche as it sounds, to buy things. They have purchase power almost. And the influence industry has skyrocketed just because they do see the love that you can build with a community. Everybody's different in terms of influencers. So there's pet influencers, there's mom and father influencers, there's podcast influencers. There's literally any type of niche that you can think of, they arrive. And it's just a small piece of marketing that's under the social umbrella that just helps businesses thrive in a different avenue.
And then how would you break down, like you kind of touched on it, but how would you break down the importance of marketing for people who are either coming out of college or for people who have been in corporate spaces that don't really focus on the marketing side of it? Like, how would you explain that to the audience?
Transparently, everything is marketing. Everything you do in your day-to-day is a form of marketing. You just truly don't know that as a normal day consumer. You just go about it. There's so many avenues to marketing. There's the analytical side, which I said I'm not fond of. And that's just numbers. And it's just because I don't like looking at numbers all day. But in terms of the analytical side, that's figuring out how the money is moving, what's skyrocketing, what's selling, what's driving these sales. Is it a trend? Is it an audio? Is it an influencer? There's so many avenues in terms of that standpoint of analytical. In terms of the influencer aspect, like I said, it's a piece of social. So when you think of social media, you think of a social media presence. There's so many brands, but right now the only one that's coming to me is Duolingo because they're having a moment. So that is a social media platform that helps you with learning different languages, but the social aspect is driving community to where they almost have like a cult-like fan base, to where everybody loves Duolingo and what they do, and more so the person behind it, which is the social media manager. And the influencer aspect of that plays into ads. And I want to say that this is the biggest thing. This is more so, there's two types of ways that you can view influencer marketing. It's the ad portion of it, which is the people that you see in these ads, both on Facebook, Instagram, these type of ads that really reel you in. That is a form of influencer marketing, and as well as gifting influencers. So you pay them to create content on their platforms, which is basically just pulling their audience into your brand. So if you're wanting somebody that will buy lip gloss, you're going to go to a beauty influencer that can sell that lip gloss, and then their natural community or cult-like following is more interested in buying something. And then that goes back into the circulation of analytical side that I don't like. But that's a breakdown of the difference between international and then, of course, just marketing as a whole and influencer marketing.
It's so cool because there's so much that goes behind influencers, content creation. People are really learning the power behind being influenced. I always say, like, I'm not an influencer, but I'm easily influenced, literally, like from the glasses, from the this is a sign from TikTok, like constantly there are things. So I appreciate influencers because I also understand how much work goes into creating content, especially very intentional content. So, or I mean, all kind of content. And I think that everyone is starting to see how big of a business it really is, and why brands and companies are tapping into it, and how these roles, because your official title again right now is what?
My official title right now is Influencer Marketing and Brand Partnerships Associate Manager. That's such a long title, but I made it, so I can't be mad at it.
It is, but it also didn't exist several years ago. Like, this was not something that existed. And one of the things that I like to drill in with people is a lot of times culture, community creates opportunity, but then also I just heard you say, like, you created your title. And I'm assuming at work, but then also in your businesses as well. And a lot of times I try to tell people that sometimes you build your own lane. Sometimes you're like, hey, here's all the things that I can do. Here's the avenue that I see. And so you get to title it. You get to like create a space for yourself. So I would love if you talk a little bit more about that, whether it's on the entrepreneurial side or the intrapreneurial side.
Absolutely. So I work for an e-commerce brand for everybody watching. And in terms of creating that title, it was because I felt like it wasn't, like you said, right, it wasn't hinting on all of my skill sets, and I wanted to ensure that that was showcased in my title. And that's just as simple as negotiating that. But in terms of building it out, now I see it a lot, which is kind of interesting. So I'm kind of trying to figure out if I was the reason for that. But bringing out all of your skill sets is intentional. And I think when it comes to creating a title, I don't believe in being one-dimensional. And I believe in sharpening your skill sets in so many different avenues. And although some people may not agree, I definitely think that you can do so many things and you shouldn't have to shield or yield what you're capable of. And I think something that I am learning is that it's okay to be different, and it's okay to ask for something that may seem far-fetched. I know when I created my title, although it's very long, I felt like it truly created what I wanted for myself. I had been in a coordinator role for a very long time, and I did want to be a manager. And I feel like the role that was originally planned for me just didn't truly highlight everything that I have been doing in the industry. And when it comes to cultivating that, you truly just have to have the confidence in yourself to know that you deserve that. And imposter syndrome is crazy, but I knew that I deserved that title. And so I asked for it, and luckily, they were receptive and I was able to get it.
I love hearing that because you ask and you shall receive. It doesn't always work out like that, But the reality is, if you don't ask, you'll never know, right? You could have gotten a title, and at titles aren't the end all be all, but they definitely help navigate in spaces or open up spaces and open up roles for conversation. So I think that that's really awesome. So what I want to talk about now is trans transitioning. I want to transition into navigating isolation in the influencer marketing, being the first, being the only, being the few. I want you to talk a little bit about your thoughts on why there are so few of you in that space and how you're navigating and dealing with that, or even how you're trying to change it.
I think that's an amazing question. I think I'm definitely on the ladder of trying to change that. In terms of how I handle that, coming into influencer marketing, transparently speaking, it was very whitewashed in terms of the status quo, but a lot of times they wanted to use creative ideas and concepts that typically are cultural, which derive from, you know, a Black person's experience or a Black person's strategy. I think for me, the biggest win was last year. I actually made a LinkedIn post saying I don't know any Black people in the influencer space and I want to find them. And that garnered a lot of traction in a good way. It was very positive. I actually did find a lot of Black amazing people that work in this space, and it almost seemed like we were hidden. I don't know if I opened up a new portal or I don't know what
Claim it.
happened there, but they all started coming out, and now I'm connected with so many people. I feel like I'm on such a culturally diverse side of LinkedIn now. But without me doing that, I would have never known that I wasn't alone. I think in terms of navigation, as much as many hate to say it, code switching is a thing. And as of recently, I stopped doing that because I wanted to show up authentically as myself. And I truly think that that's the best way to navigate that. Because yes, you may not look like me, but I know what I'm capable of, and I'm able to adapt my work to code switch to what you need, which is more so just like target audience changing. But I don't need to change myself to get into a room that I want to be. And I think the biggest thing for me was honestly kicking the door down. I don't have to go through the door that everybody else wants me to go through. I can build my own. And that's something that I pride myself on, is truly getting into those spaces, but being myself the entire time I'm doing it. And I think for this space specifically, you almost have to. And there's still this open conversation of there's not enough Black women in social or influencer at all, but they have so many unique ideas. I would say I have so many unique ideas that I feel could definitely skyrocket if actually given the opportunity. But a lot of times either brands don't want to bet on that opportunity, or sometimes it's unfortunately deep rooted in racism, which is unfortunate. And it is just something that you have to truly navigate in terms of just pushing the door down, which is why that's my biggest thing in the world. I work for a brand that you would probably never think I work for, because of how it's perceived just on socials and things like that. But I'm also intentionally changing that as well. And I'm finding influencers of color and actually bringing in a more diversified palette. And that actually was a really big strategy last year for me, and it worked. I was actually it was very accepted by the entire team. And now we're doing really great in terms of sales and everything like that.
I'd love to hear that. I think that's awesome, right? Like there's multiple layers to that. There's the you having the understanding that I can be myself fully, but I can also jump into this space and have a diverse way of showing up for my client base and saying like, hey, here is what your target audience or the audience that we're trying to capture in the space is looking for. And I can help you navigate those spaces, but I can still be myself at the end of the day. And I think that's important. And then also being able to come into a company and show them like, hey, here is the strategy that is going to help you grow. It's going to help you expand, be more creative, because that's what diversity does, right? Being able to bring in different ideas, different cultural backgrounds, things that you at that time they might have never heard of, and understanding, you know, the true meaning behind it. So I think that that's really cool. Tell me a little bit about how you're also working in this space with your own two businesses. Like you've got two businesses, you also work full time, and you are working on bringing in more Black women, Black men into that creator space. Tell us a little bit more about like what you're doing with those two businesses specifically, and what you're looking for.
I think for my marketing agency specifically, I really just wanted to help leverage fun and creative ideas. So in terms of that, I'm really focusing on as I go into this new year and moving on. I want to work with brands that actually are interested in strategy that can help them grow. I think for my marketing agency on its own, it's just not been stagnant, but it's been to where I don't think I'm reaching the audience that I really want in terms of creativity. So for this year, I really want to champion myself to finding those creative brands and those creative business owners that really want something out of the box and strategy wise that can really pivot them to the next level. In terms of my influencer agency, I really want to help creatives. I don't necessarily want to say that it's only for Black people specifically, because I don't want to deter anybody from being interested, but my primary focus is helping creators that either don't get acknowledgement. It's more so I really wanted to manage creative people. I really wanted to manage people that have unique ideas, but they may not have a big following. But as I'm learning in the influencer industry right now, the biggest plus is community. So although you may not have the biggest following, if your community is really engaged and almost to that cult-like level, that is more of an interest than having a big number of followers. And I want to manage people that have that creativity and just need somebody to advocate for them. I'm a big advocate on transparency and money, along with just like the terminology in influencer marketing. And I think a lot of times creators with a smaller following kind of get the short end of the stick in terms of not knowing the terminology that's used in the industry. So I just wanted to bridge that gap of working with really creative people, but also getting them really creative ideas in the hands of these brands that they so love every single day.
Awesome. So there's a couple things here. Here at Grow in the Middle, we talk about being in the middle of your career, middle level. We talk about middle life. And there's so much room in the middle. There's so much seniority. There's so much power in the middle. And so from a entrepreneur, excuse me, from an entrepreneurial perspective, you are in a role that, like, when I say a middle role, right, like that big area there, and you are able to drive strategy. You're able to influence sales. You're able to influence the direction that the company is going in. And so you're able to do this at the middle of your career. There's so much room for you as you continue to grow, and you're building a lane for yourself, which I think that you already know, right? That's very clear and intentional. And then from the entrepreneurial side, you are building a space that provides access and opportunity for creative people that don't always have that space, that don't already have the community. And I think that I want to touch on something you said about you don't want to just say you want to help Black women and Black men, because at the end of the day, if you're a creative, if you are able, that you can work with them, it's clear that you will. But I think that when we specify a lot of times, it's because the world is not built around us. And so oftentimes it is normal for agencies to focus on what is deemed to be American culture, or that culture, which is typically geared towards white backgrounds and white culture. And so when you're like, hey, I am looking to find more diversity, more people, and I'm also looking to help provide access and opportunity to people who look like me, people from my community, because they are getting the shorter end of the stick. They are being paid less. And this is not a secret. We are being paid less across the board in every avenue. So I think that that is really, really important. And I love that you're highlighting these things, because people need to have the understanding of, like, the only way to build community is to reach across, reach back, and to help each other. It doesn't mean that I won't help anyone else. I want to be very specific about, like, what my mission is.
Absolutely. And I think that that's a huge driver, because a lot of times people do push you in that box when you do say, I want to help my community. They just assume that that's the only thing you want to help. And that's not true. However, my community is already behind, so I do want to help scale them. And then if you want to be along for this ride, you're welcome to be a part of this journey. But my mission is still the same. It's always going to be the same. And I love how you highlighted that, because it's definitely true. It's not that that's my intent to only work with people of color or Black people as a whole in any part of my businesses. But that's naturally what gravitates towards me, and I'm never going to shield away from that. And I truly just think I'm happy to lend a hand to anybody, but especially to people that look like me and that I know are getting overshadowed by the typical American standard. I don't even want to say white people, the typical American standard of just whatever that looks like, whether it's how you cultivate, how you create, how you design, whatever that looks like. I just want to be a helping hand in getting people the shine that they truly deserve from that aspect.
Let's talk a little bit about some advice you would give to people in the middle of their careers, right? I want you to just share, like, what are some of the things that you've had to either teach or build up or rely on to get you to this point? And what have you gone through? What advice would you give to people who are like in the middle of their careers and still trying to figure out what they want to do and where they want to go?
I think that's another great question. I'm a firm believer in God, so I'm going to say that He moves me for everything. In terms of how you grow from being in the middle, trust yourself. Bet on yourself. The nobody's going to bet on you or advocate for you more than yourself. And I think that's something that I had to come to terms with a couple of years ago, because I typically would get an imposter syndrome, feeling that I was too young to be in this industry. However, my knowledge exceeds my age. And I think that that's something that I had to understand really quickly, because I was lowering my own acceptance of things because I felt like I didn't deserve them. So I would say, take a step back, breathe, and realize that you're exactly where you should be, and then pivot from that. Because a lot of times we get so caught up in the mix of social media is a big thing. Although I work in it, it can be a blessing and a curse. And I think sometimes that curse comes from the fact that you feel like you're not doing enough or you're doing too little. And I think you're exactly where you need to be. And God leads all of my footsteps. He is always the person that I trust and confide in terms of moving to the next level, building out the next level, whether that be a business or a side quest that I'm interested in. And I think truly trusting and betting on yourself, you are always going to win. It's something that I have done my entire life, honestly, even when I didn't realize that that's what I was doing. And every time I bet on myself, the outcome and the outpour was so much greater than the fear or stress of not doing the thing that I wanted to do.
I love that. That is solid, solid, solid advice. I love that. Let's jump way back a little bit. You mentioned all your family went to the same university. Um, and what are they doing? Because I'm pretty sure they're not in influencer marketing based on our conversation. So let's talk a little bit about how you strayed away from whatever your family was doing.
I have always been the creative one in terms of anything, whether that be fashion, my life, the way I wear my hair, the things that I do. My family is very traditional, I would say. Almost all of them have careers in some type of, I call them the normal 9 to 5s, even though influencer marketing is also 9 to 5. But majority of my family are teachers. Actually, now that I'm trying to cultivate it quickly in my head, majority of them are teachers, with a few of them. One of my cousins works at UPS. He's been there all his life. One of them is in sales. A lot of them are in the sales aspect of marketing. So between either being a teacher or being in sales was like the two things that they chose to pivot into. And I was more so the outlier. And then even my mom works in finance. I would never do numbers. As you heard me. That's probably why I don't like numbers. Because my mom is like an analytical genius. But I think, and my grandma, she used to work for a hospital before Hurricane Katrina. But she's very, very, very intelligent in terms of like reading and writing. But nobody in my family does anything marketing related outside of me.
Well, now I'm hearing like where all in your genes, right? We've got like with the exception of the finance, we've been clear on that. Which listen, the numbers, I want to see them. I don't want to break them down. I don't want to go through all that other stuff. But no, I think that is dope. But like having history of teachers and having like just these like very analytical minds is really, really cool. As you were coming out of college, were they expecting you to go into one of those avenues, or were they open and supportive of what you were looking to do?
I think, well, I have to give credit to all of my family, but specifically my aunt, my mom, and my grandma. all of my family has always been supportive of whatever I do. Even when I call them and announce something new, like my business, I called my grandpa and told him I was starting another agency, and he said, of course you are. Like, it's almost like in your nature to thrive, and they're typically surprised now when I announce some fun things, but it's almost like they've always seen that for me, even when I didn't see it for myself. So I can definitely say that that was not something that they pushed me into. My mom was actually the one that wanted me to do international business, but because she was so analytical, didn't realize that marketing was an avenue. But after she figured out that that was a passion of mine and I could do something with myself, she's always been supportive. But I can definitely say I'm blessed to have a family that truly supports any and everything that I do. And they've always been proud of me from like the beginning. So blessed to have that. But no, nobody was trying to force me to be a teacher. It was never going to happen. Can't be around kids that much. And I also just think that being creative, like I said in the beginning, being creative was always something for me. I've always done something creative, whether that be I took music classes, I was a dancer, like I was always in the sense of a marketing aspect, even though it wasn't marketing. So I think it was always a path that was just different, and they could see that from early on.
There's so many stories that are popping up in my head as you're talking because you said you're blessed to have a family that has always supported you. And I think, agreed, I have a extremely supportive family, community, and network. And if I told my mom tomorrow that I'm starting another business, or if I wanted to be an astronaut, they'd be like, all right, honey, what do we, and it is absolutely a blessing. I think that it it drives me in a lot of ways to know that if I think all of my like very first events, because I've started multiple businesses before, like my family are first ticket buyers. And so like if nothing else, I'm gonna break even because my family is gonna be there to support me. And I think that that is really important. And that's like your first form of community. And so there are so many people in this world who do not have that, whether they just don't have it at all, or they have people who are disappointed in them or wanted something different for them because that's what they've always done. So how do you see that show up in the influencer marketing or the creative space? Because a lot of people will say influencer creators, like it's not a real job, or this is a fad, this is a phase. What would you say to those people?
It's almost something that you have to. I'm a big firm believer of giving people grace, and I feel like I can understand how you feel like it's just getting in front of a camera. But when you actually pay attention to some people that show the behind the scenes of it, it's way more than just a camera. It's the perfect camera. It's the perfect lighting, the perfect angle. I've seen influencers redo takes 5 to 10 times because they weren't able to say they wasn't right, or the angle that they had wasn't right. It's truly almost like a mini production. And I feel like a lot of times they are not given the credit that they deserve. And yes, they have the glitz and glam now, but if you were to scroll to the very beginning, they've been doing this forever. And you have to understand that the glitz and glam, of course, is always going to come after you've fulfilled what you needed to do. But you weren't watching them from the beginning, stressing and just trying things. And I think the biggest difference between somebody that is not a creator versus one that is that the one that did kept going. Because at the end of the day, that is literally how they got to where they are. They didn't build that community overnight. Some do. Some people do go viral. But for the majority of the creators that did make it, they truly have put in the work and effort, which is why they now can be a little bit relaxed and not post as much, or everything starts to seem more addy. But I do truly think that it is a job within itself. And taking it from me, I feel like I'm also a very unique perspective because I do create content. I just never think that I will get to the point of wanting to be an influencer, so I don't create it as heavily as I could. But I think knowing what they go through and knowing how they get there, and also dealing with the online comments and the online judgment, it's way more than just picking up a camera and talking. It's actually building a community. I've seen so many influencers build community, save community. Keith Lee is a really good example of that. He saves businesses. He saves small businesses all the time. That's a community driven person. That's how you bring community together. I feel like the influencer avenue, while some of them do get to the level of celebrity, a lot of them still focus on community and truly leveraging that. And that is why I think it'll never just be picking up a camera. It's actually somebody's livelihood. It's actually somebody's life to do that. And a lot of times, a lot of these influencers actually had jobs before they became an influencer. So I also think it's always crazy to hear the thought of like that they're just creating content for fun. There's a couple of creators. I know one that actually went to nursing school and graduated, and then she blew up. So now her nursing degree was just a nursing degree. There's a lot of people in that avenue. You do something you love and you find a different passion, but I think they deserve way more credit than what they get. Because it's not as easy as just picking up a camera and putting on a happy face. They go through a lot of things, both on and off camera, that a lot of people in their wildest dreams would not be able to handle on a day-to-day.
Honestly, the more I learn about creating anything, I'm like, good God, even with the podcast, right? Like, we've like put this together, and it's been a really great start, and I'm super thankful. I'm super thankful for Steven. I say this all the time. I will never not say it. But I think there's a couple things, because I want to talk about a little bit more about community and encouraging people to find community, but the right community, right? So you talked about going viral, and you talked about like people working to, get to this space where they become these overnight sensations, because there's this quote, like, you work years to, become an overnight celebrity. But then there are other people from a content perspective that like they go viral and they have this community, but maybe not necessarily the community they want. And then you mentioned cult-like community. So I want you to kind of, if we organize this a little bit, I want you to talk a little bit about what does it mean to go viral, and how do you also decipher the right community, encouraging people to find the right community, whether they want to be big influencers or like micro influencers.
Oh, this is good. Okay, so in terms of being a viral or overnight sensation, it's exactly that. Something you post, and this is now going into an analytical side of things and also social media side of things. Something you post could possibly just be placed in the right algorithm at the right time to where you get an influx of views, likes, comments, whatever it is, whether it's a dance, a recipe, a get ready with me, how you styled your outfit. Something you did that day was so perfect that everybody started sharing it, liking it, exploring it. It just became viral. A lot of times you'll hear people also say, you need to prepare for that viral moment. This is typically said in the business aspect, because are you actually ready to go viral? Like, do you have the product? Do you have the capacity? Do you have the bandwidth to actually handle going viral? Because it's something that is not something that you can expect to happen depending on what the video is. So I also think this is a really good play into your next question of how do you know the right community? I think these viral moments, and there's another reason why you hear a lot of people say you can't just make something go viral, because that's not how it works. And typically the videos that do go viral are ones that you never expect. I've seen people question how they went viral for something so simple when all they've done is all of this hard work and content for a long time. It's just what the algorithm likes, is what people like. In terms of following the right community, being yourself, I think, is how you find the right community. If you show up every day acting like something you're not, or being something that you're not, now you have to put on a facade for the rest of your life, because you didn't build a genuine community that liked what you do, that loved what you do. I think that is the true tell all, is the fact that a lot of times when you are building this community, it's around you and it's centered around you. So the best way for you to find your community is to be yourself. And going back to that cult-like community, most of the time that's because those creators were themselves, and now people want to continue to follow that journey. Whether they love your personality, they love what you do, they love how you edit, they love how you style, they love how you do whatever you're doing. And that's why a lot of times you'll see somebody say that you can't copy that, because you can try, but the recipe is not going to be the same. It did not come out of the same kitchen. And a lot of times you have to understand that how you build that cult-like community is truly being yourself and just leveraging who you are.
I love all of that. There's a lot in there, because I think we're talking about influencers and content in this avenue, but a lot of this relates to what you've been doing in your career. And then some advice that I would give to people, right? As you start to build your career, you learn, you even mentioned in the beginning, like at first you thought like, okay, I have the code switch, or like this was just natural, which I think all of us, like it's like taught to us some way, shape or form, or the space being the first or the few that you're in kind of forces you into that, because anytime you do something that is normal, that you and I would understand, your environment is like, huh? What? So I think that like being yourself and building your career, whether you're a content creator and influencer, whether you're a manager of brand partnerships and influencer marketing, whether you're a salesperson, marketing person, whoever you are, a nurse, building your career, being yourself is so crucial and it's so important. And it will also help you to grow. The more you learn about yourself, who you are, what you like, the more experiences that you have, it will drive you to become better versions of yourself. And if you're unable to live in a space where you can operate as yourself, you'll never get those experiences, because you'll only do what now social media is telling you should be doing. You'll only do what your boss or your coworkers are telling you should do. And instead of figuring out like, hey, here's what I'm really passionate about, here's what I want to pivot to. I can say me personally, had I listened to my dear loving mother, who I love to death, who's very supportive, but my family is all correctional officers and law enforcement, right? And so my mom was like, you would have been a great CO. You would have been a warden by now. And I'm like, have you met me? Like, have you met me? And we're close. So, like, you think I want to be in a jail like every day? She's like, no, it's so easy, girl. No, absolutely not. Right. So coming into a space of tech and tech sales and insurance and all the backgrounds that I've been in, it was like, oh, I don't know what she does, but we're going to support her. Like she does this. My mom never knew what I did, but she was just like, I'm just going to support her in that space. So a long way of just saying that you're touching speaks to more of like how content creators and influencer marketing, I know it's a real job. I understand how important it is and how much work and effort it takes. And just like any career, people show up thinking like, oh, you just got here, or you're special, not understanding the amount of work it takes to get there. So you just highlighted a lot in that time.
Thank you. I definitely think, and we've already touched on a little bit, but people truly think that the overnight success thing is just you didn't work for it. And it's so underwhelming, because no, they actually did. They've been preparing for this. They've been growing for this. This is literally what they've wanted. They've strived for this. I think that plays a role, not even just an influencer, but even just in everyday life. And then I think that's a big thing with my imposter syndrome. A lot of times I felt like I wasn't deserving of the spaces that I was in. But when I actually think about it, my mom is really big on, this goes back to having the right community too. My mom is really big on reminding me of who I am and how far I've come. She makes it her mission to let me know that I've been working since I was 16. So although I may not think that I deserve to be here, everything I've done has strived for me to be here. And she's very good at allowing me to remember my intentions and how much I've actually worked. And now that I'm receiving the fruits of my labor and actually getting into these spaces and being happy with where I am in life, she reminds me every day that I deserve to relax. I deserve to rest. I deserve to finally take a break, because all I've done is work and strive to get to this point. And now that I'm here, sometimes she allows me to remember that, because you get so caught up in your day to day that you forget that a lot of times you're living in blessings that she prayed years ago, that you're just now receiving the fruits of your labor for actually following and being obedient and striving to get to that point. So a lot of times I find myself sitting back and realizing that a lot of things that I asked for truly have come. And it's something that you really need to take into. But having a big community also allows you to see that, because I surround myself with people that do support me and actually do realize the work that I put in and how much that I actually strive to do these things. So I love that. And I love to hear, my mom always thinks that I should work for the federal government. And I'm like, no. Have we talked? Because you literally know the businesses that I have. None of them relate to anything government official wise. So I don't even know where she gets that from, but I love that your mom does the same thing. I'm like, that's not me. It never has been me. So anyway, on to the next subject.
I was like, girl, what? No, 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 no. But it's funny. I have a question about this is a take that I have. I love my family. They are so supportive. My mom, my dad. My dad is like my like I don't know. He's like my soul. Like there's something about I love me and my mom are really close, but there's something about me and my dad. Like me and my dad are really, really close. And I think because we're like emotionally the same. My mom is like a little thug. She's like, toughen up. My dad's like, no, we can cry together. And I'm like, I need that. Uh so I'll give you a quick story and I'll tell you like why I want to mention this. So last year when I got laid off and I wanted to start like my coaching business, I'm like talking to my dad about everything. And I'm telling him all the things, all my imposter syndrome, all the things I'm afraid of. And he's like, you're going to be fine. And I'm like, in tears, I'm like, Dad, no, I'm stressed. Here's what I'm afraid of. And he's like, Mariah, you're going to be fine. You've always been fine. And for months, it made me feel just like, not that I don't know how to put this into words exactly, but it always just made me feel like they didn't worry about me because they were just like, you're always going to be okay. And that gave me a sort of pressure to like, okay, I've always got to be okay. I can't fail because the expectation is that I can never fail. And so I want to know if that's something that you've ever felt or anything similar to that, whether it's by your family or by you're like your own internal pressures.
I think yes, but the experience I had was watching my mom be a single mom, and navigating that with two kids. Many don't know, but my brother actually lives with me. He's like my best friend, so he lives with me, and I brought him to Houston with me, because I wanted him to have a great life and not have to work as hard as I felt like I had to work. Something that I hit on a little bit ago was my mom always reminded me that I've been working since 16. I've always had the mindset of being something. And I think that's why I started working so early, was because I wanted to make something of myself. Although I've never been pushed by my family to become something, I think it was always an internal pressure that I wanted to be or get to a point where I could have my mom be proud of me because she's worked so hard. So I think it was more of an internal pressure. I don't think I've ever been given an external pressure from my family about needing to be something, because I've done everything that they wanted. I went to college, I graduated, I didn't have kids young. Like I literally did everything. Everything they thought of for me happened. So this is more about a personal journey. And I think internally, I do sometimes find myself trying to chase more. And this is something that I used to talk with my therapist about. I need to book a session with her. But this is something that I used to talk to her about in terms of not resting after I've hit a goal. For some reason, it's an internal thing with me where I truly, every time I hit a goal, I make another one. So it's not something that I'm able to ever sit and enjoy, because there's always another goal that I want to hit. And I think that that is something that I've had to fix, because prior to talking with her about it, it was truly something that was basically making me tired. It was wearing me out because I was basically chasing something that wasn't there, but I felt like it was there. So I kept going and I kept going. And you get burnout by doing that, because you can literally just sulk in the fact that you've made it. I don't do that anymore. And I'm very intentional now with being anchored at where I am. And I actually had a really good talk yesterday with a connection that I made on LinkedIn named Joshua. Joshua, I want to give you your shout out. And he was very big and almost felt like a big hug of intention, where he told me, I have gotten to this point and now I can anchor myself and everything else can come to me. And that doesn't mean that I don't have to put in the work to get what I want. That just means that I don't need to chase any more of what I'm wanting. And I felt like that was really kind of like a little hug from God in a way of letting me know that I have fulfilled what I wanted, and now I can finally allow for whatever blessings and whatever I need to do in my life to just come to me and not feel like I have to keep chasing or finding or leveraging these things, because I've done so much in such a short amount of time that I truly just need to be reminded of like who I am and how far I've already come, and whatever that looks like after is fine, but I can anchor myself and not have to feel like I have to keep chasing something that's truly not there. I just be setting goals. So like it's not they're not goals that are like needed in my space. It's just truly like I just always feel like I have to keep going, and I don't know what that is, but I thankfully, with both talking to Joshua and even my therapist years ago, it's just truly grounded me to where I don't have to feel that way. But it definitely was something that I went through internalizing it. And I also think that comes from a form of being a Black woman as well. You always feel like you have to work 10 times harder, which we do. And that's another reason it was probably internalized, was because I felt like I wasn't there yet. I didn't have this title. I didn't have this salary. And these are all things that just sat with me, and that's why I felt like I kept chasing something.
Hmm. I Wow. I think I can absolutely relate to that. I think that always chasing something, always trying to help someone. Like once I figured out something, like instantly trying to help someone, and to your point of like, okay, I hit this goal. Now let me teach my community, but I need to rest. I need to like sit back. I need to rest, which is a perfect transition into like balancing, right? You've got balancing your two businesses, your full-time role. You've got balancing relationships, personal relationships. You've got your brother living with you, which I think is awesome. I think that like being able to provide, making it to a point that you can provide for others in your family and want to, I think is really huge. So kudos to you for doing that, because I'm pretty sure it has impacted him in a major way, and it will only continue to do that going further. So I want you to talk a little bit about what you've learned about setting boundaries, and how they have helped or hurt you in this space.
I'm a firm believer in boundaries. And I also did not, oh, the Lord, it's going to be a deep one. I also did not have boundaries at all for a while as well, which is also another reason I started my therapy journey. I'm so sorry if you hear a dog barking. However, I think, oh, setting boundaries has done both. I think it has helped me because it has allowed for me to get to a point of having the community of my dreams on my terms, along with my career, along with how I run my life and how I operate my life. I think setting boundaries, people only don't like boundaries because they can't hurt you, because you put your shield up. I think it's hurt me, not truly hurt me, but I have lost some friendships and I've lost some things because of setting these boundaries. However, the true purpose after was way more fulfilling than keeping those people in my life. So I think setting boundaries has allowed me to almost be, not necessarily, I don't want to say an expert in my life, but it's an expert in the field of life, because I feel like I'm allowed to accept what I want. I'm allowed to decline what I want, because I will never tether on those boundaries. So I believe that, I believe that boundaries honestly shape your life and shape what you want out of life. I think the only people that truly hate boundaries are the people that want to break them, because people are always going to respect your boundaries if they want to be in your life. And that is typically why people are out of my life, because if you don't want to respect these boundaries, you have to go. Because I will never taint or alter my faith and peace over you wanting to cross boundaries that I've already set in place. So I think they're huge in terms of really setting the standard of your life and what you want to accept and are willing to do, both monetarily, physically, emotionally, mentally. They truly shape how you want to be in life.
Because to your point, there are people who don't respect, or people who don't understand or appreciate boundaries, are people who are looking to break them. And I think that that is so key and so important. Um I have been through a couple of events lately in the last year or two where people like this is like the time where they want to step over or break boundaries the most. I got married last year. If you ever want to see people cross boundaries or act outside of themselves, just wait till that time frame and day. Like, whoa. Um Career transition of like people telling me what I should be doing, what I shouldn't be doing, all of those things. What else is another like purchasing a house and deciding what peace looks like in your house. Um, I come from a very, very big family and I love my family to death. I would do anything for my family, but let them live with me. And that's a boundary of like of mine. And so for throughout my career, I've always made really good money and I've always like I'm very giving. And I remember having a conversation with my mom and she was like, well, what happens if like your sister needed a place to go so she could stay for a couple weeks and then I would pay for her to go somewhere. And she was like, that's terrible. And I was like, no, it's not. I'm like one of those people that like my home is like my peace and I love people and I let people come and stay, but I don't want anyone to live with me. And the reason I'm saying this is because people typically don't understand boundaries if it's not what they would do. So I can understand, like, I think you letting your brother live with you is amazing. There's another friend of ours who let his sister, they like redid their house, live downstairs because, you know, she was doing a bunch of different things and they wanted to create that space for her. I think that that is awesome. Just because I think it's awesome doesn't mean that I have to do it for myself. And I say that to say that like people don't understand having a difference of opinion. People and like understanding something, but not necessarily having to implement it in their space. And I think that that across the board is what humans struggle with, having a difference of opinion. And especially like with relationships, this brings me back into the content creation because it's just like people are seeing people do things and they're like, I would never do that, or this is crazy, or this is stupid. And then I think that they're letting their, what do I say? They let their intrusive thoughts win and they take that time and, or they take that moment to be nasty and to like not understand. So I say all that to say there's a big lack of boundaries in the space that you're in. You talked about like how important it is for you to enact them. How do you help or teach your creators to focus on boundaries?
I think that's a really good question. In terms of my creators specifically under my agency, we have a trust system overall. Everybody I've signed was handpicked by me, and that'll stay that way. It's also why I'm probably not. Let me not say never because it might happen as I grow. But right now, I'm very firm on not wanting to hire anybody because I want to handle everything from the day-to-days because I sign these people and they trust me. It's kind of hard for them to push that trust out to somebody else. In terms of setting those boundaries, as soon as you sign to my agency, there's a welcome packet. And in that welcome packet has my times that I work. That's a boundary. I've set it from the get-go. However, if there's an emergency and they need to contact me, there's also an emergency outlet for them to do. And there's a process and protocol for them to do that as well. In terms of these brands and brands that outreach to them, all of my creators allow for their emails to filter through me. It's something that was optional. It's not something that's forced. It's optional to them to have all their emails filtered to me, and I'm able to handle negotiations. In terms of that, that's also a boundary because a lot of brands will get over on you or say that they don't have something when they know that you don't have management. That's something that I've learned early on in the industry is that a lot of brands, and unfortunately, it's also just something that has been happening since I've worked on the brand side. It's just you see, and of course, it's an understanding that I have because you do still have to make the company money. So it's only so much budget you can give to creators. However, the influencers that aren't managed typically get the shorter end of the stick because they know that you're not managed. So they know that you'll take whatever. Whereas having a manager be firm on your numbers, be firm on you and actually advocate for you is also a boundary that I have. So all of my creators provide me with their minimum that they're willing to accept from any collaboration. And from there, I handle negotiations and terminology. And that boundary is so the influencer does not have to respond on their own. They have an advocate in their corner, which is me, and I handle all emails for them. Of course, that additional boundary is me sending all of the opportunities to my creators. None of my creators don't know what they're getting in, of course. And I also don't sign anything without their final sign of approval. But the boundaries that I've set were just the timing that I'm online and I'm available for communication, along with how I handle and operate both their emails and things of that nature. But it's also a sense of trust, which I think is a big play on setting boundaries, because anybody that wants to be in your life or that wants to trust you and be around you will follow those. And that's kind of how I run my agency for the influencer side. For my actual marketing agency, I also have boundaries. I have my own policies. And this stems from past experiences that made me have to put these in place. But a key thing of my boundaries and my policies specifically is I don't tolerate disrespect. And if you disrespect me, I will cancel your order and you will be refunded. I do not tolerate disrespect. It's my biggest pet peeve, because we can be nice and you don't have to be catty or rude to get your point across. It's a simple conversation. So that's one of my policies. And I'm very firm on that. I've canceled so many things because people have tried to disrespect me, and that's just something that I will never tolerate. And another thing within that policy, because I won't go on a tangent, is I am big on communication as well. So if you take days, weeks, months to respond to an order or a request, your order will also be terminated, or you will have to pay an additional fee, because I believe my time is valuable. So if you don't believe as such, you will have to pay accordingly to get me to respond back now that grace period has went away. So I'm a very firm believer on boundaries in every aspect, along with boundaries for my full-time job. I'm off at 5. I literally turn my account off and you cannot reach me. If I choose to get online and respond to a message that came in right after that, that is such. But I'm also a firm believer of work-life balance, and I'm not working 24/7. Now, if it is my fault or there is something that I have to get done, I always work later. I have no problem doing my part in that aspect, but I have a boundary of when I'm off, especially when I take off, I delete the app off my phone. You will not get in contact with me. My emails are gone. I'm so sorry. And these are firm boundaries that I have. And so far it's been great. Everybody's been following them. But I am very, very big on not allowing anybody to challenge those. And they're core boundaries. They're not just lackluster. And I don't even want to say that, because anybody's boundaries are theirs. And there's not anything that's lackluster about them. But mine are very functional, and they help me leverage myself and ensure that I can be my best self. So I respect that same respect in return. So that's kind of like how I handle boundaries on all avenues, my business, my full-time, and just in life in general.
I think that's awesome, because what's happening is that you are forcing people into a space, whether you know it or not. I think you do. But like, by having strong boundaries in place, you are forcing people to adjust to those. And then you're also forcing people to understand what boundaries they might need to set for themselves, how they need to work differently. Obviously, you and I have worked in the past together, and we'll continue to work together. And it has been one of those things where Ashlynn is quick. Ashlynn is very quick. She's very responsive. Ashlynn is also one of those people who is like, I can help you. I can create something for you, but it will still be on my terms, in the sense of like, okay, hey, I might not have like the full budget to hit this whole thing. What can you do? Okay, here's what I can do based on what you're giving me, but it still is within your minimums, what you're willing to accept, what you're going to do, how you manage your time. And so I think the takeaway for me is that your boundaries are, you said they're not lackluster. That's true, but I think that they're really like enforced. And I think that you stand on them and you don't necessarily waver on them is really what it is. And I set boundaries often, and then sometimes I waver depending on the person or the situation, or if my heart's in a different place, and it has come back to bite me in the butt every time. Even if in that moment it's like, oh, I helped this person, but now I'm exhausted. Now I don't have time to reset. And if you don't have people around you to enforce those things, sometimes when you fall off, it will come to your detriment. And I think that the way that you're building your business, the way that you're building out your client base, and the way that you're building out your life is really, really important. As obviously there's still some struggles. You mentioned multiple times that you still suffer from imposter syndrome, or that is something that you still deal with. At the end of the day, you have built something really great, and at a young age. If you want to tell people how old you are, you can. You don't have to. But I think that that is really, really important. And so you're setting the stage for yourself to be able to continue to enjoy the fruits of your labor. And the more that you grow, the more you'll understand when and where and how you want to pull back or go on full throttle. So if no one said it lately, I'm extremely proud of you.
Thank you so much. That means a lot to me. I'm not going to share my age, but that's also because I don't need any companies in the future knowing my age, because that's another thing that plays in terms of like salary and things. But I can tell everybody that I'm still in my 20s. And that is all people need to know.
Yeah.
But
And we can cut that out if you want to.
yeah,
Okay.
I am totally fine. They don't have to know the actual number. I'm in my 20s though. And something I can say too, and hitting on boundaries, is I'm also firm on boundaries with my family too. I think that's something that a lot of people do waver with, and it was something that I wavered with at the time. But a lot of times, family want like shortcuts or discounts on things, and I feel like there's sometimes where there's not a mutual respect for the fact that you run an actual business, and that was something that I also had to set early on. So I definitely agree in terms of being very intentional with my boundaries. They all have a meaning and a reason, and honestly, it's to make the world go round. If you want the best version of me, you have to give me the same respect and understanding as the boundaries that I've set. So I totally get you in terms of just like, sometimes you may feel like you have to waver. And I agree as well. I used to waver a lot, in terms of just like wanting to help or wanting to cut my prices. And I realized every time I've lowered my prices for somebody, it has been the worst client experience ever. It has been the worst experience I have ever had with anybody. Every time I've wavered on my boundaries in terms of price or whatever. So I definitely can say it's also always come back to me wrong, which is why I've like strictly enforced things now, because clearly somebody upstairs is letting me know that I shouldn't have done that in a way that I need to receive. And I 100% agree in terms of just like what that looks like.
Yeah. I respect that so much, and I appreciate it. And I think that it's a lesson for everyone to take away, like whether you're entrepreneur or intrapreneur, wherever you are in your career and in your life, the more that you understand yourself, the more that you will set the right boundaries. Sometimes people set boundaries that they don't necessarily make sense. I know for me, I'm like slowly building my business because I don't have great boundaries in place. And my need and desire to want to help people sometimes overshadows like the help that I need to give for myself. And so I slowly am putting things together as I'm slowly working on, no, not right now, maybe later. How long did this take me to do? What is this taking from me? So I really, really appreciate you sharing that. As we wrap, I just want to say to you again, like I am very, very appreciative of being able to meet you and for you to have shared the space. I'm excited to continue to obviously get to know you. Hopefully, I will be in Houston soon so that we can meet in person. Hopefully, I can move to Houston because I'm so sick of Jersey. Fingers crossed. But anyway, as we wrap up, I always ask people to share something, a piece of advice. You dropped a lot of gems, but a piece of advice that's like constantly on your heart, mind. It could be career related, personal, whatever it is that you just feel like if you had to shout out to the world, you would always say this. What would it be?
I honestly think I said it in our very, very, very beginning, and that's truly bet on yourself and trust yourself. Um, I think that's something that resonates the most with me because it's something that never shifts, because there's always going to be a point in your life where you feel like you need to do something. Trust your gut as well. And like I said, I'm a child of God, and I believe that gut feeling is truly a notion from Him.
Mm-hmm.
Trust your gut. Whatever it is, whatever you don't want to do, whatever you do want to do, whatever you feel, there is a reason that feeling is there, and you need to start to understand when you're feeling it, because there's something there, whether that's a passion that you may have that came to your head. I also think another thing that I would say is any thought that comes to your head is achievable, because it wasn't put there for no reason. You just need to figure out how to get there. But I think the biggest thing is always bet on yourself, because nobody else is going to advocate for you better than you. And always trust what that looks like, whether that's a job title, a salary increase, a different career avenue, a different path, a different fashion aspect. There's so many things that you can think about for what that means. But at the end of it all, trust yourself, because every time you bet on yourself, you're going to win. And I think that that's something that I would want people to always live by and always stand by, because it's truly gotten me to where I am by trusting myself and truly trusting the visions that I have, and not allowing other people's thoughts or opinions or judgment to interfere with what I know is true. And another thing that I would say is, don't take advice from somebody that you wouldn't want to live the life of. A lot of times we like to ask for advice, and I'm big on taking it with a grain of salt, because I believe that, actually I have a story. I'm going to give you a story really quick because this is good. I believe that if you don't want to live the life of the person that you're asking the advice from, you should not take that advice. But I have a little story that goes onto this, and I think it's the perfect way to wrap. 2 to 3 years ago, I reached out to somebody because I was interested in a career path. I am multifaceted, so I do social strategy, influencer marketing, and everything else. I reached out to somebody in the industry that was working at a company that I thought was really, really cool, and I wanted to work there. There are 2 different positions, social and influencer. I wanted to apply for both. I actually did apply for both. And I messaged this person and I asked them what they thought of both roles, because they would be 2 different departments. And this person sat there and told me I needed to pick one, because if I didn't, it would seem like I didn't know what I was doing. And then it would seem like I wasn't smart or intelligent within the space, basically. And I want to say, had I taken the advice of that person, I would always be one-dimensional, and I wouldn't be nearly where I am now, running 2 different businesses and working full-time, and all of these things are in different paths. So had I taken the advice of somebody that, now that I look back at it, I probably wouldn't want the life of, I would have been somewhere totally different, because I thought that their opinion was more valid than mine. So I say all that to say, trust yourself. You always know better. And I did not listen to her, because that didn't even make sense to me, because I had all the skill sets. And I'm now here with such an amazing role in businesses. So that is all I have to say about that. But definitely always trust yourself. It's the reason that you have that feeling, and you should always feel for that and reach for that before doing anything.
It's so funny. That is very, very good advice. Very, very good advice. I want to add one little piece onto it. You touched on it, but I just want to expand on it a little bit, because I think that when you say, don't take the advice of somebody whose life you don't want to live, people automatically think that that person is doing bad, or they have an experience. Like, people automatically go to the negative, right? Like, if they go to like family members who are not in the space, sometimes it is from people that are in the space. They are in a position that you at one point in your life wanted to do. But like, once you really start looking at what people are doing, whether they're happy, are they growing, maybe they've been in that space for years, whatever that is, like, those are the things that people need to focus on. Really understanding who these people are, and who you want to be. So I don't want people to automatically think that, oh, this just means that somebody who doesn't have the similar skill set, they might have a similar skill set, but they may not want to strive to be greater. And then the other thing is, as a person who gives advice a lot, all the time, as a coach, as a mentor, a leader, I always tell people, take this with a grain of salt. And sometimes I struggle to give certain advice or pieces of advice, because I'm just like, I don't see that. But just because I don't see it, I don't want you to not do it. And so a lot of times I'm like, yeah, you can. If this came to your mind and you want to do this, yes, here's what I think you should consider. And I want to, as you're saying this, I want to make sure that I'm continuously doing that, because sometimes I don't see the vision, and that's okay. Like that, who am I to tell you not to do something? I want to guide you. So I think that those are really, really important points to touch on. So I truly, truly appreciate you being in this space, you sharing these gems, because they go across so many different points of personal, career, and then breaking down the different parts of your career, whether you're in the entrepreneurial space or the career, like entrepreneurial space, is really, really important. Ending on that note, where can people find you?
Y'all can find me everywhere. I'm literally everywhere. On LinkedIn, I'm Ashlynn M. I just am really big on not sharing my last name that much anymore. Ashlynn M on LinkedIn. On socials, you can follow all of my agencies. Ashlynn Raquel Media is exactly that. And Dawson Marie Agency is at Dawson Marie Agency on all platforms, which is Instagram and TikTok, along with my other marketing agency. And yeah, this was fun.
Yes, I'm so glad. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. To the audience, thank you all for joining today. I truly appreciate it. If you found this episode helpful, please make sure that you subscribe, you repost, share with a friend. And if you have any questions, please drop them in the comments. You can also email us at info@authenticallyyoucoach.com. And thanks again for listening. Until the next time. Thanks for tuning in. If you've enjoyed this episode, please hit the like button, subscribe to our YouTube channel, share with a friend, comment below. The Grow in the Middle podcast is produced and edited by Mid-Century Marketing Company. We aim to create engaging and relatable content that helps you chart your own path to growing the middle. I want to thank our wonderful guests, and especially you, the listener. If you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to let us know. Until next time.